I had the bud that I used, and after that he looked at it. He looked at me and he asked me to show him where my plants were, and once again told me that they knew I had between 100 and 150 or even more plants in my house, and that if I had a lower amount, if I had 10, 20, 30, even 40 or 50, that they weren't looking for people like that. They were looking for big people that were doing big, had big grow operations, and they're doing anything in their power to make me feel like they were my friends, and lie to me about it, just
How
so
many
they
plants did you have?
they counted 22, counting I think I had about 2 or 3 that weren't even rooted. They were just little cuttings, but they still counted them as plants.
The best and the only way to win in a knock and talk situation is to never, ever, ever open your door for the police. Just as you're under no obligation to allow any citizen into your home, you're under no obligation to open the door for the cops. If the police had a legal right to be in your home, they wouldn't be knocking, they would be kicking. They would kick the door in and raid your house with a search warrant. The mere fact that they're knocking on your door tells you they don't have a right to be in your home, so don't open the door for them. If you hear a knock at your door and upon investigating, you notice it's the police, if your door is not locked, go ahead and lock it right then. I don't open the door for police. If you need to talk to me, have your dispatcher call my cell phone, or we can yell through the window like this. If you have a search warrant, here are my hands, kick the door in.
And did they let you go like they said?
Of course not. As soon as throughout the whole thing, I had 2 of the cops talking to me, acting like they were my friends, reading my High Times magazines, commenting on how the buds looked, stuff like that, playing with my kids' toys. I didn't know until they were carrying my crap out, even after that I was going to jail, and because the other guys were telling me, you're probably not going to go to jail. As soon as they had done everything, they got everything out of my house, they told me to put my hands behind my back, and they were going to arrest me. I asked them if there was any way that I could just walk out to the truck so my neighbors wouldn't see all this, and they said like no. And they handcuffed me and proceeded to carry me out by by the handcuffs, just like I had hurt somebody or something.
If all of America would use this one piece of advice to never open your door for a police officer, it would totally neutralize the cops in regards to knock and talks and tap and raps. If you do not open the door, you will not go to jail. Never open the door for the cops and never get busted. Welcome back to my kitchen. If you don't follow all the advice on this video, you take a chance of getting raided. If you do get raided, you'll want to make sure your home is canine proofed. What I mean by that is we want to contaminate the entire house, indoors and outdoors, with the odor of marijuana. In case a police dog is brought to the scene, it will so confuse the dog, they'll have to put the dog back in the car, leaving humans to try and find your well-hidden stash. A great way to start canine proofing your home is to take all your seeds and stems that you would normally flush down the toilet, place it in a coffee grinder, hit the button. You want to grind the seeds up because we're going to throw them into the yard at a moment, and you don't want any little plants popping up. By scattering the ground up seeds and stems throughout your yard, it creates an odor barrier around your house. So when a canine walks through that, he'll be scratching everywhere, and it drives the handler nuts. If you remember what I taught in the Traffic Stops Volume 1 DVD, I explained that microscopic dust gets transferred everywhere when handling marijuana. We can use that to our advantage. An excellent way to canine-proof the inside of your home is to take a bag of marijuana and just rub it everywhere and transfer that microscopic dust, causing the dog to alert everywhere you rubbed.
How did you survive as long as you did, moving the weight you moved, and only get clipped once, and that was because of a phone tap?
Being on the streets, selling drugs, there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that's kind of passed down. I was very, very good at detecting undercovers.
This portion of the DVD is probably the most controversial section because I teach you how to spot undercover officers and informants. We've been led to believe our entire lives through the media and our government that police officers are dying daily in this war on drugs. The truth is, according to the FBI, only 28 police officers have lost their lives in the war on drugs between 1996 and 2005. That's only 2.8 police officers per year. Compare that to the millions of American citizens who have either lost their lives or who are in prison facing being raped or stabbed because of a nonviolent drug crime. And whoever said the life of a cop was worth more than the life of a citizen? In fact, it's supposed to be the other way around. Cops are supposed to lay down their lives for American citizens. So remember, anytime you hear something in the media that you've learned is not the truth, it's called propaganda, and it's used to manipulate your belief systems. I highly recommend a diet of true journalism, and that's the internet. Always make sure to compare what you've heard on TV to the great information that can be found on the internet. If you're a police officer and the information I'm about to share bothers you or makes you feel unsafe, then stop being an undercover officer and channel your law enforcement energy to chasing violent offenders. Okay, let's discuss how to spot these secret government agents. There are numerous ways to spot undercover cops. The most important way is to remember that undercover police officers are trained liars. As an 8-year veteran in law enforcement, I told more lies than I have my entire life. I was a trained liar. We can use this information to our advantage by making sure to pay close attention to suspected person's body language. Remember what I taught in Traffic Stops Volume 1? The 2 top indicators of deception according to the FBI Polygraph Manual are any hand-to-head contact, which includes grooming, and palms up. Stay away from people that are exhibiting these signs of deception. Unfortunately, juries tend to believe police officers, and that's sad because, like I mentioned before, we were all trained to lie. Police can legally lie to you to get you put behind bars. The 2 top lies that undercover police officers use as an excuse to purchase narcotics are, I'm buying it for my girlfriend or boyfriend, and number 2, I'm buying it to resell. So if you hear any of these 2 excuses, beware. They were the 2 I used over and over and over again. So if a person wants to buy a small amount of marijuana from you and they give you the excuse it's for resale, be suspicious. Another great tip to remember is police are always operating on their own clock. Meaning, if they want to meet you at 3 p.m., they freak if you don't meet them at 3 p.m. So if you're trying to do business with somebody that's not on pot time, beware. My favorite tip in discovering an undercover police officer is understanding the principle that police are absolutely forbidden to allow seized drugs to re-enter the marketplace. Meaning, cops buy drugs all the time. They very seldom sell drugs. And if they are going to sell drugs, they must make the arrest shortly after the transaction has taken place to keep those drugs from re-entering society. This is valuable information, because if you suspect somebody's an undercover officer and you're not sure, ask them to bring you a joint and walk away with that joint. And if they allow that to happen, you can be pretty positive they're not an undercover cop. This helps us become comfortable when we're out of town trying to score our medicine. It's safe to go into a neighborhood and try to get a quarter bag of marijuana and not be worried, is that a cop selling me that marijuana? The only time this might happen is when the police are using a tactic called a roadkill. They sell you a quarter bag of marijuana, you drive away, they pull you over on a traffic stop. That's easy to beat if you watch Traffic Stops Volume 1. As soon as you get the quarter bag of marijuana, get it ready to eat as you drive away. If the cops start pulling you over, simply eat it and you'll be okay. The only other time the police will be involved in selling you drugs is when they're trying to sell a large amount to lure in large amounts of money. That's called a reversal operation. I personally have been involved in dozens of reversal operations. And let me tell you, the number one thing we must do is to make sure when we hand the suspect the kilo of cocaine or the pound of marijuana and we get the money, not to let anything happen to those drugs to re-enter society. So if you're involved in one of these, they're going to wipe you out right then. Always be suspicious of large transactions. If you are going to be involved in a marijuana transaction, another way to root out the moles, change locations constantly. Police spend a great amount of time prior to a transaction setting up surveillance, rigging cameras, rigging body wires. So if you decide to have a last-minute change and you want to do the transaction across the street in another parking lot and they're not willing to do that, you're probably dealing with the police. Never go to another person's hotel room to make a transaction. Always make them come to your room, and never reveal that place until the last minute. Once the transaction is made, leave the hotel. By operating in this method, you know for sure you're not walking into a trap of hidden cameras and body wires. Speaking of making location changes, change your phones constantly. Never talk on any